All right, welcome back to the 416 podcast. This is the interview series, and today we're sitting down. We are in, well, technically we're not in Bonners Ferry today. We're up.
We call it Bonners Ferry.
Is it still Bonners Ferry?
Yeah.
All right. Well, very cool.
We're
in northern Idaho, Boundary County, Idaho, and so we're way up here, and so we get closer and closer to the Canadian border, and still can't get across for some reason.
Right.
So, I've been promised if I crossed it that they would get me back, but we'll see. I don't think that's going to happen. So Wade Purdom is sitting down with us today, and he and his wife Lee are working here with the congregation, and so we're here and got to visit with them on Wednesday night and wanted to just have an opportunity to talk about the work a little bit, tell us about your family. So let's just start with first introduce yourself for those who may not know you, and tell us about your family and a little bit more maybe about where we are.
Okay. I'm Wade Purdom, and I married a girl that I met in China, but she's from Ohio, and her name is Leah, and so we together have 3 children. We have Isaiah, who's 13, and Ian, who's 10, and then Anara, who's 16 months.
Yeah.
And we have been living here in Bonners Ferry, or far north Idaho, for almost 14 years. It'll be 14 years in October.
That's very cool.
And this is a really rural place. It's one of this county, Boundary County, is still a frontier county, which means that it doesn't have access to places like Walmart. We have to go 30 to 45 miles to get to Walmart, and it's 90 to get to Costco or something like that. The medical care, most of the time, we do have a hospital that they still keep open, but they're just going to life flight you somewhere where they actually have decent medical care. Not that it's bad, it's just very basic.
Right.
And so it's a frontier county, but it's a great place to live. Sometimes we feel bad about telling everybody about it, because then everybody's like, "Oh, we want to go live there." No.
We're good. We're full.
We're good. That's right. We're good. We're full. But at the same time, we want more people means more opportunities to share the gospel with everybody. Right. So it's good. It's kind of a mixed feeling. The part of me that likes living out in the middle of nowhere by myself is like, there's people coming in. But then, so when we started here, there were about 25 members in the congregation, and God has blessed the work, and so we're now up to around 80.
That's great.
On a regular basis, just slowly but surely. So it's great people, great place to live.
Yeah, it seems like a great place to raise children.
Great place to raise children.
And we, for whatever reason, we didn't know you were even up here, and so we were down the road in Sandpoint, Idaho, and they said,
Right.
you need to get in touch with Wade. He's a Memphis grad. So let's talk for just a moment about Memphis.
Okay.
And your time at Memphis, and maybe some highlights. But so when did you started school in 2005, right?
Started in 2005.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so you graduated in 2007, and that's when we were actually starting.
Okay.
And so we just barely missed each other.
Yeah.
Over that summer. And so now, as far as the time frame that you started, you were not married when you went through school.
That's correct.
Right? Okay. So just tell us a little bit about your time at school, some highlights there, and then kind of obviously how you met Leah.
Okay. So let's see. So I had been working at Apologetics Press I started working there in January of 2005. And so then when I left my job there, I left Apologetics Press on good terms, and went to Memphis. And I was just looking for a preaching school. I didn't care where I went, but I knew Michael Cortez, and because he worked there at AP for a time, and he said, "Oh yeah," he says, "you should go." And so I got to go just right. I think it was the Wednesday. I showed up on the Wednesday of the second week.
Yeah.
And that was just, I really think that was a God thing. The support was there. I showed up and went to class and caught right up. And I had been thinking while I was at Apologetics Press with Kyle and Eric, I was thinking, I really like what they're doing, and I think I could do some public speaking. And before that, I'd been kind of, no, even people had told me, I think you'll make a great gospel preacher. And I was like, you're insane. I didn't say that out loud, but I thought that, And I don't know whether the great part is ever going to be true, but being a gospel preacher, that was just, no. But what I told myself was, well, I'll go to Memphis or a preaching school, and it ended up being Memphis to, just get better Bible knowledge.
Yeah.
And so I went there, and I think my favorite class was probably 1 Corinthians with Brother Mosier. I just loved the way he made it come alive, and that we just studied the text for what it said.
Yeah.
And I understood things about the text, and he brought them out, and I'm like, oh, that's what that makes perfect sense. Mm-hmm. And most of them still make perfect sense.
Well, and I think 1 Corinthians was like, probably for me, it was like, okay, I love this class. And then 2 Corinthians actually ended up being my favorite class.
Okay.
And possibly because I had been preaching for a little while too. And so it's kind of like the defense, Paul's defense.
Right.
And so you get a little bit of that. And so that was, of course, Brother Mosier taught that as well, so it was, he just made that text come alive for us. I'm assuming y'all probably went on a restoration trip as well.
We did.
Got to see some sites and stuff. As far as your time at school, what do you, somebody that's looking to go to preaching school, somebody that's looking to have a greater knowledge, because as you said, you didn't necessarily want to be a pulpit preacher, but you wanted a greater knowledge.
Right.
Do you think that was the better choice? I guess we'll get that out there. To go to preaching school, and then, because obviously you began to preach later, so
yeah, I did.
So kind of maybe they set you up for it. I don't know.
Well, somebody did.
Somebody did.
Yeah, I think it was good. So you're saying like go to preaching school versus not going to preaching school and just getting the knowledge somewhere else?
Well, I'm just wondering, do you think that was the better choice? Because obviously people ask the question all the time, do I go to preaching school? Do I go to university, and kind of study the Bible, or to go to preaching school and actually study, verse by verse through Scripture?
Right.
And of course, even, in every faithful brotherhood school that's out there, we want them obviously to do well, and there are obviously strengths and weaknesses in each of those.
Right.
And so I just, from your experience, and of course you left and went to China.
Right.
And to teach English in China.
Yes.
But it gave you some opportunities as well, I'm sure. So.
Right. It did. But yeah, I think a preaching school is a really good thing. I remember the different instructors would say, you could do all of this study on your own. It would just take you 10 to 12 years.
Sure.
And a lot of self-discipline.
Right.
And so I always felt, even while I was there, I felt that, I could be doing something different, but I really feel like God has made it to where I can be here. And it felt pretty clear that that's where He wanted me to be. And I know myself well enough to know that I'm not going to be self-disciplined enough to put in that level of hours over 10 to 12 years.
Not many people are.
Right. And so it was great to just have that expectation, okay, we're going to study this 6 hours, and then you're going to do homework and memory work and get it done. And then it's done.
Yeah, and that push to do that too, because I remember I had preached for a while and then came to preaching school, and had gone through some other schools that, prior to coming to Memphis. Okay. And, and so even for me, looking at the preaching school versus, some other kind of school, university, whatever, it was definitely a different atmosphere. Right. And it was very disciplined. And, even having preached for a while, to me, I think I needed that again. Just to jump back into the Bible verse by verse and have that push, we're going to do this. We're going to do this. And just a quick little funny tidbit. I remember my younger son Matthew, when we were working with a congregation down the road, kind of as preacher students, working with the congregation, and first time that he went into Bible class, he's being introduced, and the teacher says, here's Matthew, and You know, and he's going to be here for 2 years, and he says 21 months.
He was counting it down.
He started counting it down,
Alright.
which, you know, for us, I mean, you can kind of do anything stand on your head, you know, you can stand on your head for 2 years, you know,
Right.
or 21 months if you think of it that way, you know. But I think it was very good, and so I always try to encourage people to consider that, to look at that.
Agreed.
You know, and then, you know, if you want to extend your education beyond that, you know, that great, absolutely. And why wouldn't you, you know, do that, you know? And so there's always kind of this debate back and forth. And so I always like to get an opinion or a thought out there on that as well, you know, based on your own experience. So let's talk about the church in Bonners Ferry, you know, the Boundary County Church of Christ. And you guys have been here 14 years, and you said the work has changed, and you 25 when you started, and now 80 plus members, you know. And so that's quite you know, that's a lot of growth over that. And, you know, it seems like, well, it's 14 years, but at the same time, I mean, you see congregations that in 14 years that have closed their doors.
That's true.
You know, so what would you like to highlight about the church in Bonners Ferry?
Well, one of the things that really drew us to the congregation here was when we were in China, my wife lived 6 years in China altogether, and I was there for 4. And we got married after my first year. We actually lived in Wuhan. That became, nobody knew about it then, but now it's famous, you know.
Right.
And then after we got married, we moved down to a little city called Chengde. Little city, you know, only 600,000 people.
Right. Just a little small town.
So we worked with, there were a couple of brethren that had been converted when they went to a 1-year master's program at Harding. And so Leah had gone to Harding, and so we knew them, or she knew them, and so we went down and worked with them for a year. Or 3 years, I guess. We worked with them for the first year. And what was your question?
What do you want to highlight about it?
Oh, right.
Yeah,
So then we found out we were expecting a child, and we want to go back to the States. And so we're looking at basically, you know, brotherhood classifieds for we want a preacher.
Sure, yeah.
And I wanted to go to the inland Northwest, and so we're looking at Montana, Idaho, and Wyoming. And all of them were like, you know, preacher wanted, we'll talk about pay, want them to do preacher work, kind of things. You know, just the short, like they're paying per word classifieds.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. And then, but Bonners Ferry, this little Boundary County Church of Christ, they have this long blurb, and I still have it somewhere. I hunted around and found it. And the long blurb about what they're wanting to accomplish, and how they love God and they love each other, and they're a small congregation, but they're in a small community, and they're just loving God and trying to change the world one person at a time kind of vibe. And we're just like, whoa, we love that vibe. We love what they said. And so that was one of the first things. And then we started looking it up, and we're like, wow, this is beautiful. And so then we came up here, and so we've loved the congregation, and they love us. I think one of the highlights is just the attitude. We got to talking one time. Somebody was talking about being hired, and I said, we're not. The congregation doesn't think about hiring me. They support us in the work here, and I know that's a maybe just a subtle distinction, but I think it's a really important one.
Sure.
Because I'm not a hireling, I'm part of the family.
Yeah.
And of course, you know, that comes and goes.
Yeah.
With different maturity levels, both ours and everybody else. But generally speaking, that's the way they view it.
That's great.
And so that's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, and we were talking about, you know, one of the questions that was given Wednesday night, you know, was about that, you know, and you know, I tried to stress the idea of being a family.
Right.
You know, of course, not knowing necessarily the background there, and it was trying to make it vague enough that it would make sense for the application for whoever, you know, wanted to put that into practice. But it's something that every congregation needs to really think about, you know, in looking at the preacher as our family. He's part of the family. His family is our family. And looking at them in that light makes things different as you go through the work. And like you say, and there's cycles that you go through of maturity with different members and things like that. So there's always an up and down in that, but that's just life in general
Well,
too,
yeah.
and so that just carries over into the church as well too.
That's right.
What's some areas that that the church there is working on currently, as far as like what's the thing that you're working on, maybe your goals that are a year out, 5 years out, when you and the men talk about the work of the church, and so what's the plan down the road?
Well, one of the things that we're working on right now is we've been working on leadership. We don't have elders, and it feels like just we've kind of plateaued, so to speak. And I wouldn't say that and I've talked with several of the brethren, and it doesn't feel like we're going down, but it feels like we're just kind of holding steady. And so I've really been thinking and praying and researching about leadership and how do we go on from here, and how, if we don't have enough men qualified, including the desire to be shepherds, then how do we get there? What does that look like? And so we've just been working on that.
Right.
And so we're going to have a leadership workshop and vision and goals workshop this summer. And so that's one of the big things we're working on right now.
Yeah.
And just trying to determine exactly, what do we want to do? Where
Right.
do we see this going?
That's good.
Beyond, and that's trying to be more specific than continuing to seek and to save the lost, and to love our community and give glory to God.
Absolutely. Well, and those are the things that are, of course we're doing this.
Right, of course we're doing that.
Yeah. But we kind of have talked about it off camera, but that idea of leadership and working toward that goal, I mean, that should be as common as the other,
Right.
in most places, and usually we get to a point and we go like, okay, this is something lacking. We need to definitely work on it. But if we can be proactive, working on even that next generation raising up,
Right.
maybe then leadership is not a problem for the next group coming
Right.
along, and that's
That's right.
so doing our part for that. And so I appreciate that. What would you want folks to know about the church in North Idaho, just kind of in general? Because most of our brotherhood doesn't know anything about the area, doesn't know anything really about the congregations in the area. It's I'll say back in the Bible Belt, we don't hear much about it,
Right.
obviously, but
That's
it's
true.
but I know you have a connection to congregations in Montana and even into Washington and stuff like that. Thinking about what would you want folks to know about the area and kind of the culture of the church maybe in this area?
Well, dealing with the culture first, and we were talking about this a little bit off camera too. The culture here is very independent, and we Americans tend to be rather independent-minded anyway. And a lot of us out here in the West, even though I grew up in the South, we actually have a little bit of the maybe, if you want to call it the Southern attitude of fierce independence.
Yeah.
And so we sometimes even struggle with how do we do things together as a family when everybody wants to go off and be individual.
Yeah.
Including me. Sometimes I'm like, I want to go, be alone and do my thing. So I think that's, but also it's a very loving atmosphere where if you're part of the family and you need help, boy, everybody's going to turn out to make sure that you get the help you need.
Yeah, there's a sense of community to
very strong
helping one
sense.
another, and so that seems, and so if that can, if those folks are, become brethren, think about how that translates into the church as well. Being
That's
there
right.
for one another, helping one another,
That's right.
and that's, and we can still have our independence, our independent families, and do our things, and stuff like that. But it's always good when there's a sense of community and there's a feeling of wanting to look out for one another,
Right.
and help one another in that way.
So if I could add.
Yes, add.
The other thing, as far as what I would want people to know, is in North Idaho and in the inland Northwest in general in the United States, there are not very many congregations, but a lot of opportunities.
Yeah.
For churches of Christ. There are, in all of the panhandle of Idaho, I believe, well, it depends on how you count the panhandle, but the far north, there's 1, 2, 3 congregations. 4. No, I guess there's 5 now. But there are multiple towns
Mm-hmm.
with multiple denominations in them, and yet no Church of Christ. And it's a mission field.
Yeah.
And a lot of times you would have to bring in support probably, or be bivocational.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a huge need. And then there are, if you look in some of the old Church of Christ directories, there was a church here and there was a church there all the way down through north and central Idaho, and they're not there anymore.
Yeah.
The people are still there, some of them, but the congregations have all died away.
Yeah.
And some of them drive a couple of hours, which is fine in the summertime. In the wintertime, it's not tenable because it turns into 3 or 4 if you make it.
Right. Right. That's
and
why
so
we're here
there's
this time of year.
Lots of opportunities
Yeah.
for, and we need workers out here.
Yeah. And of course that's what we want to highlight too, you know, that there's a need, you know, obviously for gospel preachers. There's a need for families who would be willing to move and to work and helping build up congregations, and so we're trying to promote that as well.
Absolutely.
As we're going about. One of the things that I wanted to make sure that we asked about too is, so with the 416 Ministries, the edifying of the body of Christ, you know, we always try to think about how as gospel preachers, as ministers, servants in the kingdom, you know, it's we can easily get discouraged, and there's you know, sometimes things are just not going our way and feel like we're failing or whatever the case may be. But anyway, we can become discouraged, and sometimes that's because of different reasons. But you know, and every preacher I've ever talked to, at some point in time, has had to deal with discouragement
True.
and things like that. So how do you keep going? How do you keep going? Especially you're up here and somewhat isolated from a lot of brethren, you know, because a lot of focus and attention gets put, you know, in the south and southeast, and
Sure. Yeah.
obviously,
Well, it's the Bible Belt.
It's the
just
Bible
a
Belt.
Population thing.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, but you know, how do you work through those times of discouragement? What's helped you get through those difficult things?
So as we have lived here, and we have gotten to know some of the other brethren who are around, there's several congregations in Montana, and they actually have, many of the Montana churches have a very close network of just keeping an eye on each other and taking care of each other and reaching out and communicating. And then I've got to meet some of the brethren from Washington, and so something I've gotten involved in the last couple of years is there's a group of us, and we just meet on Zoom once a week and share what's going on in our congregations and kind of swap ideas, and or maybe we have a dilemma or something or a situation that's come up, and so we talk about it and we pray about it.
Yeah.
And so that's actually one of the main things I've learned. I've always believed in prayer and the power and the value of it, but they would, my brothers on that Zoom call would be like, so, because I would be saying, oh, you know, I'm having trouble with this situation, and they're, well, let's just pray about it.
Yeah.
And we'd put it on a list, and a few months later they'd say, how's this going? I'm like, oh man, it's a lot better. And then I'm like, oh right, we've been praying for that.
Right.
And so sometimes I just wasn't specific enough with praying about it. And so both the building up and encouraging one another via that, and these guys are 6 hours away, some of them, and I'm the Idaho cousin. Yeah. Oh, they're from Washington, you know, and but that's been super helpful and super encouraging. And so basically, building connections and being mentored and mentoring and helping encourage and build each other up.
Yeah, I think that's the key. Is that constant having that communication with one another, knowing you've got brethren who are right there, you know, phone call or a Zoom call away, you know, and knowing that you have that to look forward to each week too, you know.
Right.
You know, can't wait till I get on with my brethren, you know, and to talk with them, you know, and so that I know, especially at times of the year when you're not active, you can't get out necessarily, you know, near as much too. That certainly is comforting to know. Hey, I get this to look forward to. I get to be on, you know, and talk with these guys, and because you're all kind of, you know, up here in the Northwest, and you know, just kind of stuck during the winter sometimes.
Yeah.
So.
No, I haven't been on in like 3 or 4 weeks because it's summertime and I'm trying to get outdoor stuff done.
That's
Boy,
right.
Once the winter hits, we're just good. Yeah, we'll be online all the time.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, Wade, thank you for sitting down.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
And talking and letting us spend some time with y'all out here. We're we're out here on this beautiful lake, and so we're going to enjoy it for a little
is
bit.
beautiful.
And appreciate you being with us. This is part of the interview series for 416, and we'll see you further down the road.
How do we start
How does this thing start?
Introductions, who needs those?